Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights, episode number 252. A shout out to our viewers to like this program so that it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Thursday, and here are the main points. Fed chairman reaffirms on rates and tapering to markets. Six former Treasury secretaries write to the House members on debt ceiling. Biden and Johnson press meet ends in a fracas as media storms the press center. India calls for mutual recognition of vaccine certificates at the global COVID summit, and Indian exports set to resume. Saudi king tells UN that kingdom supports efforts to prevent a nuclear Iran. Taiwan applies for CPTPP membership, raising an interesting scenario. And Taliban wants to address the United Nations General Assembly. These are the main points. And before we start with the main news, let's welcome Sridharji. Sridharji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, sir.
Namaskar, good morning to everybody, and looking forward to a great session on this wonderful Thursday.
So we jump into your favorite topic, money. Fed Reserve holds interest rates and Fed chairman says tapering coming soon as the market snap a 4-day losing streak. The Fed is assessing the launch of digital currency, and if so, in what form? And six former Treasury secretaries urge Congress to move swiftly on debt ceiling. Sridharji, first Fed rates. Your thoughts on that?
The Fed rates are unlikely to increase before the fourth quarter of 2022, sir.
And about the debt ceiling, is this an artificial number? Is it just one of those things that people use to kind of whip the other side?
Basically, I think it's what the Republicans are saying is to answer your question, whether it is, yes, it is a political whipping point because there's a fundamental difference on policy, right? One is tax cuts funded through the economic outcomes that flow. The other one is tax the people and keep the rates, keep borrowing. So therefore, you can see what the differences between the two parties are. For example, the stimulus that came in was warranted because of a major economic pandemic. But by and large, the Republican administration are not in favor of fiscal deficits and borrowing. Flip the coin. Democrats are about socialization of the economy, distribution of benefits, distribution of income, and their focus is around wider cross sections of the economy and how to do that. To accomplish that goal, you are seeing various kinds of infrastructure stimulus, what they call as the human infrastructure program, socialization of the economy that constitutes the budget. So that means you have to have more borrowing. So you cannot have a debt limit and then have borrowed. Here, it's an incurred expense. $6.5 trillion is paid. And so therefore, if you're not going to increase the limit, then the the Treasury has no choice but to start cutting payments because it cannot print money and, balance the balance sheet, if I have to use the words. So the story here is Republicans are saying, you own the presidency, you own the Senate, you own the House, you make the call. Don't bring us in because we are not going to be part of it. So I think that's what is going on in terms of the political whipping, as you are saying.
And White House aides shout down questions during the Biden-Johnson meeting. Leaders discussed Afghanistan, COVID, and other matters. And French ambassador returning to Washington after Biden-Macron telephone call. So clearly a rapprochement of sorts. And what is this about the fracas in the press conference, sir?
As soon as the conference finished, the press, wanted to ask him the questions, especially around the big issue, which is in the United States, the border issues, as well as the complete chaos that is prevailing in the border. He basically muttered some words and they could hardly hear. He basically turned his back and walked away. So these guys rushed to the White House officials, the press box, and basically said, what the hell is this? If the guy is coming in and he's not even willing to take a question around some of the issues, including the press conference with Mr. Johnson. So, in fact, the Bo Joe meeting, by Joe becomes a big fracas, and I think that it was not very well received.
And the US Chamber of Commerce pressing House Republicans to save 1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. And the Biden goals close to collapse as Democrats feud across a number of bills tied to debt limit, spending, infrastructure, voting rights, election reforms, and amnesty. Sridharji, there are 100 people who say that they are progressives, although maybe 10 are active. But if you look at the chair and the whip, that's where my fear comes, sir. These are not people who I would call as mainstream America. Your thoughts on where this is headed? Are Democrats going to self-destruct?
Well, I think first and foremost, the $1.2 trillion, which is about 560 billion plus extendable, that's the 1.2. And that was bipartisan. I think they should have passed it because that gives the impetus in terms of the infrastructure, specifically around manufacturing, around the airports, ports, etc. And then this broadband expansion and putting some money into the communities that basically helps the businesses to manage their affairs much better. They have stalled it, notwithstanding the fact it has been approved. Now, coming to the second part of the question, which you are raising around this, it's quite amazing as to how a very selected few people, though this number is left is about 100, or the House Freedom Caucus is a number that is ever changing rather than fluid, rather than for solid, depending on their candidacy for the elections that are coming up. You find that there's about 5-6 people who continue to raise the issues and try to stonewall every attempt. They are not mainstream, as you rightly say. They are on the outer layers. But it's always the case, the outer layers make enough noise in the system when they have a political leverage, which is disproportionate to run down. You saw that. You saw the case of Israel's $1 billion bill got down, and now it is back up as a separate bill. Then you saw that the infrastructure bill is tied to 3.5 trillion. The 3.5 trillion in turn is tied to all those other items that we mentioned. So they never seem to be because they want to avoid filibuster. This is the basic story is filibuster. So we're going to wrap everything around, and this is notwithstanding the fact that they did not get the parliamentarian approval. Now, these same people in this House Freedom Caucus saying basically go against the House Freedom Caucus. So which means why you have rules? What they're saying is just have one seat mandate, 2 seats mandate, and get on with it because we have got our votes. That is not the way democracy works, but these people are not part of democracy anyway to start with.
Yes, indeed. And the DHS Secretary, Department of Homeland Security, says the border is no less secure than it was under President Trump as the Democratic supporters fight over Haitian deportation. Sridharji, any kind of illegal entry into this country is not right. Right now, it is still in the grip of a pandemic, and still, things are being fought over as to who should be allowed in, who should not be allowed in. Right now, no one should be allowed in, especially when they have not been tested for COVID. And what is the big rush right now? So, Sridharji, I am completely flummoxed and flabbergasted about this whole thing. Now Democrats are fighting that, Haitians should not be deported, that they should be staying here. The problem is there are thousands and thousands coming in now. There is no way even a country of the size of US can handle the influx. They don't have jobs. They have become immediately subjects of the government. Where are they going to find the resources to make food for them? It's just a mess, sir.
I think you have summed it up well. There are 2 ways to express an opinion. One is called speak lies. The other way is not speak the truth. So at the moment, the way I would kind of look at the stuff that is going on, particularly from Minister Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, is, I'm not telling you everything. So therefore, because what you don't, then you don't speak lies. For example, he says 100 people were sent back, 100 Haitians. So people ask the question, how many thousands came in? No answer. Okay, it's just as an example. I've seen a video where you can see the buses progressively dropping off at vantage points. I'm not going to disclose the locations. These illegal aliens progressively dropping them off. The video very clearly taken points out this. So there is an orchestrated way this is going on. And again, to bring Trump, we have given in Daily Global Insights the data, especially on stay in Mexico policy, as well as the tighter ICE, immigration and customs enforcement, as well as the more empowerment of CBP, reduced tremendously the illegal immigrants. In fact, we had a net outflow of something like 40,000 or 400,000. My numbers, I don't remember the exact numbers during the Trump regime. But we have now 2 million people have come in. As you have said, we have pandemic, we have an economic situation, and we have a funding issue. We already have 8 million illegals here, and they're trying to tie it to the budget. Under these circumstances, it just makes no sense for these people to be brought in. But then who can tell Mr. Bernie Sanders, who is spearheading this open borders and open sesame policy?
Sir, I would like to see if there is any way a rule is brought into play that anyone who crosses 75 years of age has to take a sobriety test, a clear test of how well they are responding to various situations, and this has to be open. This should be done by a panel of doctors who are neither Democrats nor Republicans, and therefore the public of the United States, the people of the United States, know the state of health of some of the senior lawmakers. All of them have touched 80. God only knows what kind of medication they are taking, and God only knows what they want to do. I mean, this Pelosi has really gone off. They should have done the infrastructure, like you said, completely. That was a separate thing, worked on that, but needlessly trying to hold it hostage because they don't think that they are going to be able to get around the filibuster is nonsense. And what was this thing about the Israel deal? We'll come to that in a minute. Let me just go on to the arrival of the Indian Prime Minister in Washington, D.C., and that he is going to be meeting with the President, the Vice President, Mr. Morrison of Australia, Suga, and other business leaders. In fact, there is more and more information coming out that he's meeting with several CEOs. And Indian Prime Minister Modi calls for mutual recognition of vaccine certificates and announces that India is ready for exports as domestic vaccines gain steam in production. Essentially, India is getting to a point where they probably have vaccine surplus. That is good news. Sridharji, 5-6 years ago, there was the same enthusiasm, but what has changed, sir? Nothing. In India, it is still as hard as it was then to start a business. I'm telling you a simple example, sir. Last year, Ms. Sitaraman said in the budget that a single NRI can start a company in India. The rules have still not been framed. PMO, you are listening to this. Tell me what happened and what has not. Why have you not framed these rules, sir? Please go ahead.
Right. Okay. So there are, 3 levels of dissecting this particular information. Sree Iyer and PGurus wins hands down on the micro level, the ones that you are attributing to. So I'm focusing on the 2 macro levels, which is the top line, the first and the second. So when I look at the top line, the money that is flowing into infrastructure is getting translated into specific and tangible outcome. You can see the projects, right? So therefore, I see at that. Second, the defense manufacturing and the defense, which is the government to government or government to business engagement, you are beginning to see progress being made and defense production being done in India as an example. And crude refinery is another example that I can that I can relate to. The third, the FDI, equity flows, money into both equity as well as the startup ecosystem that's beginning to flow in. So what's the message here? Where there is a direct government hand in terms of monetization and commercialization, there seems to be progress because it is being dealt at a very simplistic level. Then, when you take it, the money directly flowing in where the government has no interference, it seems to be working. The problem seems to be, as you point out, at the micro level, where individuals and entrepreneurs who want to start business and who want to establish partnerships, I call this at probably MSME type of a level, not at Reliance Group or Ambani Group or Adani Group or any of those, or Tatas at that specific level. So you're beginning to have problems, as you rightly say, around that specific, the third tier. I don't know whether that is going to be that easily solved or that is going. I mean, I can't kind of get my hand around the specific issues. I can only recall one statement, which is by when Madam Nirupama Rao spoke, when I had the opportunity to spend some time with her and speak with her. She said, look, India has its problems, and everybody knows India has its problems and bureaucracy. It is going to take maybe 20 years. If it took 5 years in China, it's going to take 20 years, or it may take longer even to get done. But we got to keep moving. So that's just my response to your statement, sir.
And the United Kingdom adds Covishield to the vaccine list, but 10-day quarantine is maintained. Issue with certification and not the vaccine, says the United Kingdom. A little bit of back down on part of the United Kingdom, but this is a clear and present challenge, because I can see that even in the United States, Covaxin has not received emergency approval, whereas the others such as Pfizer and Moderna got emergency approval within days, and Covaxin effectively is better than many of the other vaccines in terms of battling some of the variants. This is a proven record. So what prevents the FDA from giving an emergency approval to Covaxin, sir? Do you have any insight into this?
Political. The insight is political. You have all the data. If you remember, we covered this in Daily Global Insights. Dr. Soumya Swaminathan making a statement that India is well advanced, and the Covaxin is likely to get done. I don't know who the head of the chairman of they were supposed to be the chairman of there is a specific group in WHO where the chairman, India had its round, and when the health minister was, I forget his name, he was saying that things we have moved further along. Now, for no specific reasons, this meeting has been deferred to October 5th. Okay, the approval meeting has been deferred to October 5th. I can't get my hands around it except to say WHO is littered with politics. That's about it. That's all I can. There's nothing scientific about it other than politics. Okay, that's my first answer. On the UK side, it's very hilarious when I read the reports. Well, it's not branded AstraZeneca. It is branded Covishield. Well, the story is the second. Covishield is not registered in EU or any of the European countries or in UK. So it has not met the registration guidelines. So it's very difficult for us to kind of approve. These are the kind of answers which is very typical British bureaucratic. Remember, India is, if bureaucracy in Britain is one level up, India's bureaucracy, which mimics British, is probably 3 levels up. So we have these are the reasons that has been cited as to why Covishield has not been approved. And then politics, and then, of course, pressure, they approved it. But still you have apparently 10 days of quarantine, and one has to spend 600,000 Indian rupees at their cost to get through this quarantine as well. So the question is, why would anybody want to visit UK with this type of architecture that they have created? And UK is right now in the middle of an FTA with India. It's trying to reach out to various destinations, and perhaps that explains the reason why a new trilateral group has been formed called AUKUS to divert the attention. Whatever the stories are, it just is none of these things add up, and there is no common sense to rationally explain what these things are.
And the United States has a president who will fall asleep in the middle of a meeting. It's just ridiculous. India, UAE to start trade talks and sign a comprehensive economic partnership by March 2022. A target of over $115 billion on a 5-year frame, growing from the current number of USD 59 billion, almost doubling. The FDI equity flows are up again 12% in the April-July period, and now the number stands at 22.42 billion. I think you touched upon this at the macro level that India is doing well. It's all great and good to know, sir. I'm going to go on to the next one because we've already covered this part. Taiwan submits bid to join CPTPP trade pact, and the bloc members face the looming prospect of Taipei or Beijing. Hang Seng jumps more than 2%, and Evergrande shares surge more than 25% after days of losses. Attacks on Myanmar military spike following call for revolt, while the pro-democracy group sets up office in South Korea. Sridharji, let's first take a look at Evergrande that has been in the news for all the wrong reasons, of course, and the imminent failure of that 60 billion company has 150 billion loans, and it's not able to pay them. It's going through acrobatics to try and keep their base. They have taken money from people. They haven't built the houses yet. It's the same story that any other development country probably goes through. But in this case, there is something more sinister. There is this grand plan where Xi Jinping is systematically trying to whip up nationalism. That's the only way I can say. What are your thoughts in the long term? Because one after the other, and financial, now this, all the big behemoths are being, brought to keel.
First and foremost, I think that the Evergrande situation is, as far as the global investors are concerned, I will not mention the names of the two financial institutions which have done the assessment since we last spoke. They have done the assessment. They do not believe that it has a pandemic effect on global markets as is perceived to be. And it is not a Lehman Brothers, it is not a GFC. Just to kind of clarify that specific point, they've done an independent assessment of that and the exposure levels. If and when it becomes public, we'll share it. With regard to the point that you are making, it's an asymmetric growth of business of Evergrande. They started with construction, they went into theme parks, to stadiums, to all and every. This gentleman is the founder, the chairman of Evergrande, is a member of a CCP. Mr. Xi Jinping has two agendas. One is individuals cannot have a disproportionate wealth creation in a typical free market structure. So that is why he is going after in a relentless manner against all the companies that you listed, ranging from Ant Financials to this specific company, to Alipay, and so on and so forth. So he's going after them in a maniacal manner. Then I think the third is that he wants to make sure that it remains, as you rightly say, a patriotic, nationalistic Chinese company as opposed to a free market, globally listed, profit-driven company. So political alignment as well as national alignment in terms of the DNA of the architecture of the new companies, and the markets are paying a price for that.
Australia says that it will be patient on rebuilding ties with France. US and Russian army chiefs meet in Helsinki for 6 hours. Italy triples pledge to provide vaccines to other nations, while Germany bats for Tedros at the helm of WHO. Here you go again. You mentioned this, that WHO, it's very political, and the same set of people are still trying to be at the helm.
Well, you can make out as to we have stated this, and WHO, same with United Nations, and United Nations. The same issues kind of prevail from a political architecture point of view. It's good that Italy is stepping up and basically saying it is going to double or triple the volume of vaccines that it needs to export to the world. The reason is it's pandemic. You can't, there are going to be people from different countries coming in. You can't selectively, unless you start vaccinating the world, you're not going to get to the outcome. So I think those two things are, that's a very good, very positive thing. With regard to one specific point that we gleaned over, Taiwan is now just issued a statement, which is to say, you have to get me into CPTPP first before you let China in. If you let China in, then they're not going to allow us to come in. So you can see a very active engagement from Taiwan on that side. Sorry, I digressed from the European section into that, but I just wanted to make sure that we touched on that point. So Taiwan has become very aggressive within the construct of how to tackle China, both at the political and economic as well as at the security level.
And the Saudi king tells the United Nations that the kingdom supports efforts to prevent a nuclear Iran as Saudi, Iran, and Arab officials meet on the sidelines. The Taliban have asked to address the world leaders at the United Nations in New York this week and have nominated their Doha-based spokesperson Suhail Shaheen as Afghanistan's UN ambassador. Sridharji, this is the 3I area. Saudi Arabia is also concerned that Iran could become a nuclear power. Let's say that Iran does manage to become one. What do you think Saudi Arabia's options are going to be?
I think it is there is a, if for example Iran becomes nuclear, Saudi's options are either very limited or it is working on a plan to partner with United States, if at all United States is going to bend, or it will partner with any allied nation to come up with a nuclear deterrence. It's just not going to be sitting there as a lame duck because Iran and Saudi compete on oil exports and infrastructure. So therefore, especially the energy infrastructure. So therefore, there is going to be, again, nuclearization of West Asia, and many countries will come up with a deterrence mechanism, and that means more nuclear arsenal in that specific area, making it very potent and volatile.
Leader of the House Appropriation Committee reintroduces the $1 billion Iron Dome bill one day after its removal. Incoming ambassador to Israel commits to security, support Abrahamic Accords, and avoids boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Sridharji, what are the chances of this new bill passing?
The chances of the new bill passing, depending on how it is being drafted. If it is that 1 billion, it will be passed.
Thank you very much, sir. And with that, we bring to an end today's episode of DGI. We will be back again, I think most likely on Sunday at 11 o'clock, because we're going to have a special segment which will be covering today's news, tomorrow's news, and Saturday's. A lot happening in the UN General Assembly session, and we will give you the things that you will not get to hear from other channels as usual. So it's worth your time to watch us. Thanks for joining. As always, Sridharji, it's a pleasure, and we will see you again on Sunday. Namaskar.
Sunday. Namaskar and have a good day.